10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And we are live. Good evening. How are you, Michael?
I'm amazing. How are you?
I also had a wonderful day. Thank you. We are here with the wonderful Michael Villines. I hope I pronounced it correctly this time.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, just think
Oh,
real lines put together, the lines, and you got it.
Villines. Well, we had a wonderful interview, I believe, just a few weeks ago. And the discussion was so interesting, and the topic, I mean, is something that we really, really want to dig in. So, Michael and I thought it a good idea to be back with more information today. Now, for those of you who don't know this wonderful person, my good friend Michael, let me read his bio for you. It says, the doctor walked into the room and said, "You have multiple sclerosis." That changed my life. From my diagnosis in May 2018 to now, it became my life mission to improve my diagnosis. In 2021, I started working with others, teaching them what I've learned that's helped me out to improve and work towards improving and changing 2 billion people's lives, giving them the ability to change and take control of their own diagnosis and health. You live to better the lives and the health of other people, and that is such a commendable, way to go at it. When you were diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, you had the opportunity to just, sit down and leave it right there, but that's not what you did. Tell us about that. The first action you took after deciding that you were not going to let that diagnosis condemn you or stop you or inhibit you.
Yeah, I think whenever you get, and thank you for having me on the show.
It's a
The
pleasure.
when I think whenever you get hit with a lot of news that because a lot of this happens so fast that because all within 6 hours, well, not even 6 hours, maybe 4, 3, or less than that. I had my second appointment with the neurologist. They said, "We think you have multiple sclerosis. There's some tests that we need you to get done." I'd already had the MRI. And so the next steps from there was blood work and that they do a lumbar puncture. And because I work in industrial construction, it say the last day is the 30th of the month. And
Mm.
then the next day of the month, you no longer have insurance. So I'd gotten laid off that week, and I ended up going to the appointment with my friend because the nurse called me up and said, "You need to bring a family member." I thought that appointment I was going to die. And then, or get some news
Oh,
that you only have X amount of time to live or whatever it is. So they were like, "We think you have multiple sclerosis." Nobody really knows what multiple sclerosis is until they
yes.
do more research on it. But then within maybe 30 minutes later, the nurse called me up and she said, you don't have any insurance." I went, "My insurance expires the next month." And then like I don't have it next month. And she went, "Well, you could come in and we can do a basic to where we can draw the CS fluid from your spine, but we can't really do it as great as we normally could, but we can do the basic one." She was like, "We're remodeling the room. If I can get you in an appointment, you need to come right away. Basically, it can't be hours and hours." So I was like, "Okay, that works." So I ended up So she ended up calling me back maybe 30 minutes later, and she said, come on over. So me and my best friend, we went back to the medical clinic and they did the lumbar puncture. And when they did it, they stuck me like 4 or 6 times before they could draw the fluid.
Oh
So the
no.
experience was a little traumatic. And then,
Yeah.
so between all that and then within 3 weeks, I was set up with my next job in on the next job site. So I had another job site to go to. And so between all of that and then ended up getting the diagnosis after that job was done. And then the doctor was like, you have multiple sclerosis. So I think whenever
Yes.
you get, I think the more traumatic news for me was more on the second appointment because I thought there was going to be something more dramatic than multiple sclerosis.
Yeah.
And then with the diagnosis, whenever you get diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, what happens is that the doctor walks into the room. This is all within 15 minutes. About doctor walks into the room, says you have multiple sclerosis. Either goes, here's the medication I want you to be on, which is either a DMD or a DMT, which is a disease modifying drug or disease modifying treatment, and
Yeah.
then or they go, this is the one I want you to be on, and then they walk out of the room.
Oh my
So you
gosh.
get hit with that news and you're like, I
Yeah.
don't know what's next. So that's very traumatic
Yeah.
for a lot of people. I think even for me,
Mm.
I just had it between all the stuff that happened. It's like a getting sucker punched by somebody. You don't ever expect it coming.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, and then and then I was planning on like this huge long joyride of all this stuff because I knew that I needed to take some steps in my own life with diet and a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
So I just went. So I had like this month long, or maybe it was a year long joyride of all this foods and stuff that I know I should say goodbye to at some point, but
Yeah.
I ended up, but I wasn't sure when that was going to be. And then I
Yeah.
can remember having a conversation with my dad in the car, and he went, before that was okay because you didn't know really what was wrong. But now that
Mm.
you know that you have multiple sclerosis,
Yes. Yes.
you need to take steps and you need to take control of
Mm.
your own health as much as possible.
Yeah.
He was like, there's people that they've changed up what they eat, they changed up their lifestyle, and they do a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
and they've changed their diagnosis, or some people they're living symptom free, or they beat their diagnosis as much as possible. If
Yeah.
you keep on doing the same lifestyle that you're doing, you're going to end
Mm.
up in a wheelchair. But the choice is yours. So after that conversation, I was like, man, I'm not really sure. Like, thought about it for a minute, and then I was like, okay, I need to take control of my own life.
Wow. Wow.
So between a couple of events and stuff, I ended up having two goodbye nights, stuff that I enjoyed. And then
Yeah.
after that, I ended up setting a date. And then I went from this date forward,
Yeah.
alcohol, food I know I shouldn't eat, whatever, cigars, smoking my pipe, whatever. I'm done with that.
Mm.
So I can
Mm.
remember waking up
Yes.
at my favorite micro brewery in the car, and I was like, oh man, I hadn't gone around to smoking my pipe, but I was like, but I can't do it today because if I do it today, when is the stop of
Wow.
like I'm just gonna keep on going. So
Moving the weight up. Yeah. Wow.
so from that point forward, and I can remember after getting diagnosed that I ended up walking around a art museum,
Oh.
and I just looked at the paintings and I thought about all the stuff that had happened, and because it all happened so quick that there
Yes.
wasn't time to really, yeah. And I'll tell people that there's pretty much whatever you go through, that there's a grieving process
I'm
that
sure.
everybody has to go through, and that you have to go through that grieving process to actually heal
Mm.
and get
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
So I can just remember looking at the different paintings, thinking about everything, and then sitting down on a bench, and that I thought basically if I keep on drinking, that
Yeah.
basically all that's pity drinking. And if I keep on doing it, then the person that I was trying to be, because I was working very hard on being the toughest guy on the construction job site, because I was a
I,
helper at the time, and I had just recently. So when I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis,
mm.
my grandfather on my mom's side, no, my grandmother on my mom's side died, and
Oh
then I was
gosh.
diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and then I just passed my national certification for being a pipe fitter, and then there's a bunch of other things as well that I think happened all around that time. So
Yeah.
there was all this big stuff and
Mm. Just at once.
at once.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I can remain in sort of this matrix to where I can do what everybody's like the doctors and people are telling me, or I can
Mm.
follow and I can look at a more functional, holistic form of medicine. And then I
Yeah.
went and found a functional health doctor and started working with him a couple months later, and then really took a lot of what I learned from them and all the things I learned along my journey, and started teaching other people that.
That's amazing. I listened to you talking and I'm thinking to myself, that must have been such a shock on your system. All of those things happening all at once. I can just imagine what you went through when you thought, you were gonna pass away, and you didn't know what the next bit of news was gonna be, and you were just in this time of your life. We just had your certification done, and your family member passed away. Now all of a sudden, the insurance is done, and now you are diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. That's a lot to take in, Michael. That's a whole lot to take in. And through all of that, you just said, well, you're gonna make the best of that. And that morning when you woke up and you didn't smoke that pipe, you were like adamant. You had made a decision, and you started your new life journey. That's commendable. That's
Right.
a lot of people would have done it differently.
Yeah, and it's like, and one of the thoughts I had sitting on that bench in the art museum
Yeah.
was I can become a victim of my circumstances, or I
Mm,
can become a victor of it as much as possible.
I
And
love
I
that.
chose to become a victim, no, a victor as much as possible
Yeah.
instead of a victim. And I mean, and there's a grieving process to go through as well. Because I can
Oh,
remember,
yeah.
because as a Christian, that between all the, because on the weekends I was day drinking and smoking cigars, and it
Yeah.
in the if we're not careful with the environments that we're in, we start
Yeah.
becoming like that environment. And I had
Mm,
started to become like my construction environment. The only thing I really didn't do was sleep around with people.
yeah.
So I just decided that now is the time to change. And I started praying and working on
Wow.
my relationship with God. And
Mm.
I realized that my thoughts can, that your thoughts can hurt you or they can help you.
That's so true. Yeah.
So I need to be around positive people because that's going to be the one thing that can help me out the most right now.
Amen to that. Yes.
So, yeah,
Why we love having you here because you're positive.
yeah.
And you always, every time I see you, always so joyous and happy and, full of energy and just going at life. You've overcome so much. You're helping so many people. So it's amazing to see your journey. If you look back now up to where you are, you can really say, you're really committed to this project and you are fulfilling your role here in life and in society to really help people face their, I would say, you mentioned that you were grieving, maybe face their tragedies, maybe face their obstacles, because I mean it's no one is born and lives life thinking that they would get that ill. And you were very ill at one point, but what did you do? You decided to change that. Now, I'm sure there are many people in the audience, not, and you mentioned that when we started, not many people know exactly what multiple sclerosis is. Will you give them a definition, a general definition on what it really entails?
Yeah. So all the autoimmune conditions, I use the word condition instead of disease because because disease makes it sound like you're going to die from whatever you have, like you're on a ship and everybody's gotten scurvy or something that's really, really bad and about everybody's going to die or whatever it is. And
Zombie
so,
apocalypse.
right. So I use the word condition, and what multiple sclerosis does is it attacks your nervous system. And your nervous system has this fatty wall that covers it, and that's called your myelin. And multiple sclerosis attacks your myelin and it wears down on that wall. And then that wall just wears down more and more and more. And so I've talked to a lot of people who have major temperature sensitivities. Some of that's due to that, or really wherever it is that MS just attacks that part of your nervous system. And depending upon, because no two people who have MS have the same symptoms. So there's some similarities, but everybody, for the most part, that their symptoms are different. And because of that, that some people that they lose their eyesight, they can't walk anymore, that their limbs or whatever just doesn't work the way that it should work. And so depending upon what part of, because when they do an MRI, what they're looking for are lesions on your brain and your spine, and that looks like white matter. So because of that, that's depending upon where your lesions are, that's what part of your body gets affected.
I know what it is, but I've never heard an explanation like this before. That was a very, very good general description of what MS really is. And you and I had a lovely talk about food. I believe we joked about banana being bananified. I remember that, and we also had a discussion on if coffee is healthy or not, because these are things that we consume on a daily basis. I want to ask you, for those who were not in our first session, what are nightshades? I know you taught me what a nightshade is, but tell the audience what's a nightshade and why it's not always so healthy, for us to consume maybe too much of it.
So nightshades, I'm not sure what the scientific definition is, but as far as foods that are nightshades, that's eggplant, tomatoes, potatoes, peppers. All of those are considered nightshades, plus there's some extra ones in there as well. and nightshades that they can cause inflammation in your body. That potatoes, a lot of people don't know, but if you don't cook potatoes correctly, that can cause health issues in you as well. And a lot of other things like peppers that can cause inflammation just because it's hot. So I know things like cayenne that has some healing potential to it, and I forget which the doctor was, but she talked about healing ulcers and a bunch of other issues in your
Oh,
stomach. But a
okay.
lot of it also goes back to how healthy is your body, because what
Mm,
may be healthy for one person may not
mm,
be healthy
so
for another
tricky.
person.
Yeah. So tricky, so tricky. We hear it so often. Your health is your wealth, and that's really, when we look at life that way, we really take cognizance of what we consume, how much of it we consume, and why we. Sometimes people go into these binges. I mean, it's normal. Some people have stress and anxiety, and then they overeat. Other people do other things. They smoke or they drink, or so it's all about the human condition, and every individual case is very important. To look at what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Now, I was thinking about, this afternoon before we came on, I was thinking about snacking, because a lot of us, I believe in a few small meals during the day, because I'm always on the go. So it doesn't really work for me to do the three main meals. That's just how my family works. My kids and I, we have a few small meals, obviously over the weekend when it's less rushed and there's no extracurricular activities in school. Then we'll sit and we'll have a proper meal time together, and really, go all out for the cooking and everything, because there's time. But snacking is something that's part of our lifestyle, because we are extremely busy. We are busy with a lot of things. So what are healthy snacks? Because I must get into that habit of looking on the package what the contents and the ingredients are, before we snack, because snacking is easy. We live in a fast-paced society, and in between small meals you get hungry again, so then you snack. What are snacks that you would encourage the audience to have to consume?
So snacks can be easy. You can do a lot of different things. Like I know sometimes I've done the multiple meals throughout the day, that the smaller meals, more spaced out, is better for you than the three main meals, just because your body, the way that it works, it breaks down food and runs through food a lot faster than three meals. I have no idea who came up with three or why they decided three was a good number, but I know I felt healthier and I felt better when I've done like four meals and just four smaller meals. I know if you go to Unleash the Power Within, Tony Robbins talks about meals the size of your fist. I've heard of some people in India talking about meals the size of two of the fists, that being this perfect. And then I'll just tell people, find out what your body feels good with. And then I know when I did the more fist sized meals, I felt better energy wise than a lot of, but snacks, healthy meals that you can do, uh jerky, you can do, if there's epic bars, you can do that. You could do fruit, but the important thing with fruit is balancing those sugars out. So having a
Sugar.
protein or
Mm,
having a fat along with it, that way it
yeah.
balances out that sugar and it helps you out. Because the big issue with fruit is more your insulin levels and not having crazy spikes at the wrong times. And depending upon if you have any health issues like diabetics and other people like that, then fruit can be a major issue for them just because it spikes their blood pressure a lot more. And then you can do smaller meals like we talked about, or just different things like that, to where I really recommend, like a lot of people, they'll eat chips or different things or different foods similar to that. And then I know chips have an issue of that there's a lot of sugar in them just because it's a lot carby, and some of the carbs have a lot more sugar in what they'll do to your blood sugar and so on, that could cause some issues, to where that's what I would talk to people. Sardines, that's a great healthy snack. And then, or whatever, something similar to that, that would be a healthy snack. And then um seaweed, that's a healthy snack. And then, and a lot
Oh,
of seaweed, nuts, seeds, depending upon what your sensitivities are to those. Seeds are a
hmm.
lot fattier than nuts are. So depending upon,
Interesting.
yeah, they are. So, and I want to say nuts have, almonds are very nutrient dense, and other nuts, they have a lot of power to them as well. But the important thing with nuts and seeds is that they've sprouted. So if you can't find any sprouted anywhere, like when you buy them, so nuts and seeds, I believe, and I know especially nuts, that they have this little acid coating that around them. Have you ever noticed that when you eat them, there's this little bitter taste to whatever
Yeah.
one that you're eating? So
Yeah.
that's nature's way of protecting it from getting eaten. So
Wow.
when you're eating that, you're ingesting all the bad stuff that nature doesn't,
Yes.
that nature's trying to protect you with. So the key is to buy them sprouted. So if you can't find them sprouted,
Oh,
and they can be more costlier than just buying them regular. The only place that I found that sold sprouted nuts was, and you can find sprouted, some companies they'll sell sprouted pumpkin seeds and other seeds that, but the I know for for the pound of pecans, it was $20 at Whole Foods, and for a pound of sprouted almonds, it was about 11 or 13, somewhere in there. So if you want to save some money and avoid that, the key is to buy it, to to eat it sprouted and a little dehydrated, or something similar to that. So the key is, because I read this in the Pegan Diet, Mark Hyman was talking about when he said, "Eat them sprouted." I was like, yes, there we go. We're on the same page. And so what you can do is you can
right.
soak them overnight, and
Okay.
then if you don't have a dehydrator, then
Mm-hmm.
go ahead and put them in your oven and lightly
Oh,
toast them, and
wow.
that'll give a similar effect, to where all your nuts and seeds and all that, you can in your body can break it down. It's a lot easier for your body to break down, and you're
Okay.
not consuming it to where it's trying to protect itself, and you've broken that down.
Wow, wow, wow. That sounds delicious, by the way. I might just try that. To roast him
Yeah,
a little
go
bit
for
in
it.
the oven. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it's so great to hear about all these healthy snacks that's really out there. And I think we have to discipline ourselves to make sure, what we consume during the day, not just to grab a packet of chips and in passing and just have that, but
It's
to have
easy.
healthy things. Yeah.
It's quick and it's easy. And if you eat enough of them, it'll fill you up. But I
Yeah.
had to quit eating chips because I found out at one point that that was my one of my stress, or that was a stress relieving food. So
Yeah.
I'd buy a bag of chips, and then 1, 2, maybe 3 days later, the bag would be gone. And then after a while, I'd look down my stomach and it'd get bigger, and then I'd go, it's time to start working out or something. And so I just
Yeah.
cut out chips completely because
Yeah.
I was like that I eat it's not good for me to eat that many all of a sudden. That and a
Yeah.
lot of stuff that's fried in oils is
Mm,
not healthy
right.
for you to. I do all my cooking with water,
Oh.
but the thing with oils is the way that the majority of them are processed, that
Mm,
there's damaged cells in those oils. And when
yeah.
you cook with them, that
Mm,
expands that even more. And that if
wow.
you do consume oils, it's best to consume them when they're cold, or
Oh.
do it like your grandparents used to do it, to where they put it on their salads, and that would be as a flavoring or their food, and they use it more of as a flavoring than to
Yeah.
cook with. And then all these companies started selling all these terrible oils for people to cook with that are terrible for you, and with all the damaged cells that are in them. That the I was listening to a talk that Udo's
Yeah.
Oils was talking, and he was saying we're all probably going to get cancer at some point when you consume more
Wow.
damaged cells like cooking with it. Then that speeds all that up. So
This is very, very interesting, and you're very knowledgeable, about this topic. And I wanted to mention that when you were speaking about being healthier when you eat a few small meals, I remember reading a study about the fact that our liver has to rest a little bit. That's why this intermittent fasting is also healthy for people. If
right,
they don't, they stop eating at 4, and I think they only resume eating at 10 o'clock the next morning. That's actually
yeah,
good for organs because
yeah,
it gives
yeah,
the organs gap to work and to
yeah.
rest.
And time-based eating is good. And the trick with intermittent fasting is that whatever
Implemented.
your daily nutrients are, that
Mm,
you fit that within that time zone. So
mm,
whatever for your body weight or however you're doing it, you're
yeah.
supposed to fit that within that 8 hour time frame, or
Mm,
whatever time frame that you're doing that. A lot of people, they cut
yeah.
down their entire meals down to one meal or two meals, and that's not really the right way to be doing intermittent fasting. It's whatever your daily needs are, you
Yeah.
eat that within that time frame. And then
Mm,
when you're out of that time frame, that's when your
mm,
body heals. And with
yeah.
intermittent fasting, that one guy that I talked to who was doing it, he talked about lions, and that a lot of people, that they relate lion that the intermittent fasting to how the lions eat, because the lions will only eat within a certain time
Mm,
frame in the day. And what
mm,
that does is it boosts your T cells and a lot of other
mm.
health benefits to it, to where your body starts healing and it starts working as much as possible. Plus, it
Wow.
starts using fat for fuel,
Mm,
and that's where you want to be. That's where you want to be, and probably on an intermittent fasting diet. Higher fat um,
mm,
is
mm.
probably a little bit better, just because you're breaking down fat a lot more. That a ton of people are keto. They're huge keto
Oh, I've
fans,
seen that.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and I could care less about keto, just because I think a lot of people who aren't, well, I would argue that a lot of people who do some of these diets are, I don't have anything against any diet that you're on, but a lot of the reason why people feel so much better when they go to eating all these healthy meals is because they were eating so bad and they were consuming all this stuff that wasn't good for their body before. And then when they have to eat a specific way that's better for their bodies, they go, oh, wow, I feel so much better. Well, I would argue that it's just, you just started eating healthy. And that's how you're supposed to feel the entire time. But because you ate terribly, that you never really felt that way before. But now that you're restricting yourself and you're making a point to eat healthy, things have changed for you.
Yeah, yeah. Good point. Good point. I read somewhere, it was in an article, it was a while ago, about the fact that some people avoid sugary foods, but then they go to the other extreme. They only go for the salty foods. And that article actually said, and I want to hear your opinion on that. They said, they wrote there that eventually salt is also broken down into sugar in your body. Is that true?
I'm not sure. So there's different salts out there too. So the big reason why a lot of foods are so salty or so sugary is because that's what your taste buds enjoy the most. So companies out there, they picked up on that and they just started dumping sugar and salt into a ridiculous amount of salt. If you buy a can of just regular canned beans, pinto or whatever, and you look at the amount of sodium that's in that can of beans, it's ridiculous. And that your regular table salt is terrible for you. And then it's the salts that have the most benefit for you and that are actually good for you. Those are the sea salts, the Himalayan pink salt, and those salts, those are good for you, and you should be eating with those. And I mean,
Yeah.
and even if you look at a label of sea salt or pink Himalayan sea salt, which is probably the healthiest out of those two, and it has a ton of health benefits to it. But
Yeah.
that you'll look at it and they'll say this is not a good source of sodium. But
Mm.
if you eat regular table salt, that's a ton of sodium right there. And
Mm.
so, and there's not really any health benefit to it as well.
Mm.
So it's
Mm.
more, so to me, it's more about the type of salt that you're using. And because animals, for the most part, they'll lick and they'll get salt, but they're not eating a ton of salt or anything similar to that, just because salt, when you sweat a ton, then that's when you need to consume the salt to replace those minerals that you've lost. But besides replacing those minerals, even if you look at the animal kingdom, they don't consume salt a ton. It's just when they sweat a ton and they need to replace what they've gotten rid of.
Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Thank you for sharing that with us. We are learning. We are learning. And I wanted to ask you the final question. Tell us about healing journey.
So healing journey, so a lot of it, so everybody has their own healing journey. So I explained some about my healing journey, and everybody has it, even if you haven't gone through where you're getting diagnosed with something like I was, that we all have something that we've gone through. I've talked to a lot of single mothers or other people who go through something pretty serious, and I'll tell everybody that we all have a healing journey, because early on there was the grieving process that I went through and the steps that I did. And I'll tell people, don't ignore that, because that is probably one of the most important steps early on, because if you never heal from the grieving process, then you, in a way, you become a victim from whatever circumstances that you went through. And everybody has a different grieving process that they all go through, and everybody's timeline is different. But because I know a lot of people, they go through something and they go, sounds like you're still grieving. They'll, oh, I know. And then you talk to them a year later, and it sounds like they're going through something exactly similar. And that spend if you stay stuck in that grieving process, and we all have to go through and we all have to do the steps to heal, but if you get stuck in it, then your cells and your genetic genome start changing all these different stuff, that all these things that are inside of you up. And to where I helped one friend who, I helped her through a time when she was wanting to commit suicide. And she had all these different parts in her journey that she never healed from. And she was bitter, and she had a lot of resentment. And because of that her chemical balance in her body had changed. And the only way to balance that out was to get put on medication. And so if you stay in that process for too long and you don't work on it, and I'm not victimizing the process or making it the bad guy, it's just we all have a different process. But if you stay in that process and you never work on healing or getting better, anything from that, then your chemical balance in your body changes. And that's when that's when bad things start happening in your body. And if you have to go through it, I went through a process. And everybody's gone through a grieving process, that even mothers, when they have kids, that there's postpartum that you have to get used to, and all of that. And so we all have a grieving process, and it looks different for everybody. And it's okay to work on healing and getting better and improving. And that's when you go through that and you get to the other side, that's when the real version of you comes out, and you can help out other people with their processes and get them to where they're in a spot to where they're healing and getting better.
Wow. Absolutely phenomenal advice, Michael. As always, it was so wonderful to spend this time with you. And you keep going strong, my friend. We are going to network with you and cheer you on. I mean, you are just helping so many people. That's heartwarming to see that there are leaders out there, such as yourself, that really want to bring about positive change. So, from the Meticulous Moments podcast, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure we'll have more discussions, because when you and I start talking, we
There
can
it
talk for
goes.
hours. Exactly. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Would you like to end with a few words of wisdom for us as we close off the session?
Yeah, I would like to say that just wherever you are in your healing journey, and whatever you've been through, that, and whatever your circumstances are, because you may end up in a spot where I was, where when I was first diagnosed, I went, man, I need to find positive people. Where are those positive people? I
Yeah.
don't really know, because the majority of people in our world really aren't that positive. And work on where you are with your journey and with your healing spot, because you may end up walking into your friend's restaurant, and the one of the cooks goes in there who you've known, goes, "Wow, you're glowing. You're really working on healing and getting to a better place." And you go, "Yeah, I have been." But a lot of that's just from working on where you are and not giving up and moving forward from there, because the most inspiring people who are out there, that they've all been through something traumatic, and they've all been through a difficult place and a journey, and that just because they're somewhere where you would like to be, you're not, that doesn't mean that they haven't gone through the same journey or something extremely similar to what you've done. It's just they're on the other side and you're not there yet, but don't give up. You'll get there one day.
I love that. I love that. Absolutely 100% true. And we wish you a wonderful rest of your day. What's the time? Are you on Eastern Standard Time? You're from Louisiana? What
I'm in
time?
Central.
Oh, Central Time. Oh my goodness. I know I'm 7 hours ahead of Eastern Standard Time, so I'm 8 hours ahead of you.
Yep.
It's amazing how we can connect on this platform from different parts of the world. So, Michael, thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you back here. I'm sure we can work in another session with everything that you are teaching here. Thank you so much for joining us, Meticulous Moments podcast audience. Stay tuned for our videos and make sure that you follow Michael on social media. He's doing great things. Thank you, Michael. See you soon.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Always a pleasure. Bye.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're the #1 fastest growing community and tribe of some of the highest level entrepreneurs all around the country and around the world. We're in 36 states across the U.S., in 11 international countries, and over 240 plus members, growing every single day. And I'm honored, excited, and I'm glad to say that I'm proud to be the official sponsor of the Meticulous Moments podcast with Juanita Cap. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm excited for this journey.
Hey everybody, my name is Patrick Rude. I'm the owner of Rude Financial Services, a proud sponsor of the Meticulous Moments podcast, hosted and directed by the beautiful, strong, and intelligent Juanita Cap. I cannot tell you enough about what this woman has done with this podcast and the effect that she has had on me and all of the other sponsors and people that listen. Don't miss it.